John, great to see you. I'm so glad we're doing this. Okay, first question, you know, a lot of people look at you as a leader, you know, and not only leading this industry, but just you yourself as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. Who do you aspire to as a leader, and why?
So I look in all directions to try and find inspiration as leadership. I looked at politics, so you think of Angela Merkel, you think of Michael Bloomberg, obviously here in New York. In business, I am a student of who the great leaders are, of course, going back to Jack Welch, but in today's world, Jack Ma, Jamie Dimon, Mark Benioff, Carlos Brito, some really inspiring people that I look to and look up to and try to emulate as much as I can.
And why? I mean, is there a common thread among those people?
Yeah, I would say hard work, compassion, leading from the front. So when I look to leadership, it's not just business success, hard work, results, but it's also the kindness and the compassion and the understanding of creating a culture that I would personally want to work in if I was a 25-year-old coming up and building my career.
I love that, having that empathy and that compassion as well as part of leadership. You know, when you think of things like, you know, these words that are thrown around these days, innovation, disruption, what comes to mind for you? I
usually roll my eyes a bit, to be honest, Betty. I think disruption and innovation is kind of an overused and misunderstood thing. You know, the whole cliche of it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I think that's what I look up to, and that's certainly what it's been for Peloton. We had an idea, you know, 6 years ago, me and my co-founders, and you know, 6 years later, that idea is still held true, but you know, 99.99% of what we've done is just the hard yards of building the business. So when I look at innovators and disruptors, I usually look at people who worked hard and were able to lead, to your point.
Well, you know, and I think also sort of related to that is failing, right? Because I mean, you know this and I know this. I mean, almost behind every success, there's a bunch of failures behind it. What are your attitudes? What's your view on failing? I mean, you know, do you have some failures you want to talk about and what you learned from them?
Yeah, I mean, I failed, like we were talking about, 400 out of 400 times I failed to raise money for Peloton from institutional investors. So.
Which is incredible to think of that now.
Yeah. Looking back, it's like I knew I had something. I thought there was something here, but why was the smart money saying no? Like, why am I? What do they know that I don't know? And it was very challenging. I would say the confidence that my parents gave me, to be honest, to just believe in myself. So for all the young parents out there, that I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, giving them just general confidence so that when they get the no's and they do see the failures, they can get back up and know that it's not them, that, you know, they can succeed.
Clearly with your family, but what about with your employees? Like, how do you teach or how do you help your employees overcome as well, you know, their fear of failing or their failures as well?
Yeah, we talk about it. We actively talk about failure and fail fast, and creating a culture where failure is accepted and it's, you know, applauded. It has to be a commitment from the top. It has to be talked about and celebrated. But you're right, we do have it at Peloton. We do fail all the time.
What does fail fast mean? Explain that.
Fail fast, it means, I mean, this sounds terrible, but you know, in some small ways you could push buggy code. You know, do you have, we say something at Peloton, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So we don't let our code be perfect because it would take too long to QA it. So we go ahead and push it, and there might be a bug or two, but we quickly fix those bugs. So that's one tactical example of failing fast. We failed to push perfect code, and we aspire to delight our customers, so we're not proud that we had a bug in our code, but we thought that the burden and our customers will ultimately be happier if we're moving super fast and pushing new features and innovating.
Yeah.
We think that they're going to ultimately be happier than, you know, if we would have worried about that bug for 3 months.
It's so true, John. I mean, perfect is the enemy of good. I mean, you know, because you could stay that long. You could just be constantly working on one thing. You'll never do anything.
That's right. That's right.
To just get it perfect. Let's talk a little bit about, because I know you know, it's very important for you to have a company that people really want to work for, and to have leaders within the company that people want to be led by. How do you keep your team motivated? What are the things you do to keep them motivated?
So one of the biggest things is you give them autonomy. You know, we have every hotshot, smart, you know, most of the people at the company, 450 people now, Betty, are smarter than I am, and they're just as ambitious. And so giving them the autonomy to run and to fail and to have a big piece of, You know, we talk about some of these other bigger companies that, you know, software engineers or people could go work for.
Yeah.
They have a much bigger opportunity because Peloton's a smaller company, so they have a big piece of the stake, and we give them the autonomy. We succeed their failures, and they learn on the job. They're not told what to do. They're given a direction, and it's kind of what you and I would want, you know, if we were 25, is that type of opportunity to shine and to really, you know, do what you love to do.
What would someone say it's like to work for John Foley?
I hope no one would say I work for John Foley. I hope everyone would say I work with John Foley. It is really a partnership of colleagues. My co-founders, I was telling you earlier about the president of Peloton, William Lynch, who is in many ways is a much better, bigger leader than I am. And he and I have been able to partner, check our egos, and together we're, you know, I think 1 + 1 = 3 with the two of us. But we have, you know, I would say there's 40 people in the senior leadership of Peloton that I treat as a peer. And then throughout the organization, we all have roles, and it's a very non-hierarchical work environment. So I don't think anyone works for John Foley. I feel like I have a role, and I see some of the hard work and the success and the brilliance around me, and I have to work hard to inspire these people and do my role well.
Right.
So I'm worried about myself in some ways, trying to get my job done.
And you know, you mentioned earlier just about, you know, people having that power to, you know, make decisions and having that, you know, feeling that they own, you know, essentially that they own their work. You know, how do you execute on that though? You know, because a lot of people will, you know, very, very rightly so, from maybe habits from before, just, you know, take directions, right? So how do you encourage that in your company, that, like, you know, you can fail fast and you can own your decisions?
So at Peloton, there's so much to do. I mean, we're thinking about category expansion, we're thinking about market expansion, and we also, within our core bike platform, we have so much feedback from our consumers. So there's probably a list of 300 features that we're adding, you know, in the next 6 months that, they're coming from our consumers, our members. Our members are very engaged. We listen to them on social, we reach out to them, we have them on panels come to HQ. So there's such a big list of things to be done that we have to divide and conquer. It's like, Betty, you know, you take half, I'll take half, let's slap high fives on the way to the bathroom and see how far we can go. It's just kind of necessity is the mother of invention with Peloton. There's so much going on that everyone gets a big chunk of it, and we try to celebrate the wins and not think about the failures.
Right, so it's just basically there's so much to do that you can't even really think beyond, that you've got to get this done.
That's right, that's right.
So I want to talk a little bit about millennials. So let's say you were to write a letter to your 21-year-old self. What would you say?
Well, it's funny, I'm thinking about this, to be honest, Betty. My 9-year-old son is starting to ask questions and have his own ambitions, and so I'm actually going through this at home. But the answer is it's kind of cliche, it's what any good parent would give their child, I believe, which is find something you're passionate about and do it well. As you know, my wife and I are very much, whatever you do, just do it well. And I think there's a bunch of, here in New York, there's a bunch of unhappy bankers and unhappy hedge fund managers and private equity people who went into it to make money, and they're miserable.
Totally.
And so from my perspective, for my son and my daughter, who's younger, I want them just to be happy. And I think whether, you know, my son's into music right now. You don't dream of your children going into the music industry, but he's so passionate about it, and there is money to be made. And if he enjoys that and that pursuit, and he's working hard towards that, then I'm going to support him and applaud that.
Now, for millennial managers or for young managers, what would be the 3 pieces of advice? You can think about that. 3 pieces of advice that you would give young managers. One
of the biggest is have the confidence to get out of the way, that you don't need to actually manage. I've always said I might be an okay leader, but I'm probably a terrible manager because I don't like managing. I'm not good at it. So I think the key would be to surround yourself with people that are better than you, to tackle big challenges where there's so much hard work to go around that you have to divide and conquer, and you have to do your part.
Totally.
So leading from the front is, what are you doing? Not managing the people. What are you doing to show them that you're helping get to that goal? And I think that type of leadership is what I would encourage any young millennial to just be confident enough to not manage.
Right, to not get in the way.
That's right.
What is the coolest, outside of the Peloton bike, what's the coolest product you use?
Coolest product I use, wow. I recently got a 28-foot Whaler that I think is pretty awesome.
Cool.
The technology, I grew up in the Florida Keys in the 70s and 80s, And boats turns out, have come a long way in the last 20 or 30 years.
Right.
And it's a fantastic product.
That's pretty
cool. I know you were probably thinking something more technology driven, but
no, but that's cool.
It's a cool thing.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
So my brother-in-law has been a big inspiration to me, a guy named John Pleasance, who's a business leader as well. He's a little older, but has been my mentor. Told me when I was starting Peloton, he said, don't do consumer research, don't do focus groups, don't talk to anyone. Build a product and a platform that you and Jill is my wife, you and Jill would love.
Right.
You are young parents, you like fitness, build a platform and a product and experience that you and Jill want. And chances are there's a lot more people like you. That's probably bad advice for some other people who are students of business, where you should understand the market.
Market, not you.
But in some weird ways, I think it was brilliant. It was that Jill and I are regular adult, parents. We're regular New York City professionals. She works, I work. So time is valuable. We care about our kids. We care about spending time with our kids, but we wanted that fitness. So his idea of just building it for you and a couple other people, and I thought it was interesting.
And just before we go, John, what does rewriting tomorrow mean to you?
To be honest, Betty, I feel like we need better leadership in the world. So I think when you think about politicians, oftentimes they'll go to Washington and try to make laws. I think we need big-time leaders on the world stage. Angela Merkel's done a nice job in Europe, but I'm not seeing that anywhere else in the world, where it's some type of leadership where 25-year-olds can look and say, wow, that's where the future is going. That is the type of thought leadership that we need in the global economy, not just our microeconomies, but thinking globally. Who is the leader in that? That's the type of, that's where my head goes when you talk about rewriting the future.
That's great. John, thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty.